The part I keep thinking about is not even Jason coming back. It is the way he might come back. Because if Jason really returns to Port Charles in the middle or toward the end of June, and he is not walking back in as Sonny's protector, not as the man we always expect to stand quietly in Sonny's corner, but instead as someone tied to Cullum, I do not know. There is something about that idea that does not sit right with me. Jason being forced into someone else's orbit feels wrong. It feels almost unnatural. And maybe that is exactly why it feels possible. I keep picturing him showing up with that same controlled expression, the same silence, the same way he carries pain like it belongs to nobody but him. But underneath that, something has shifted. Something has been broken or bent out of shape. And I cannot help but feel that if Cullum survives, if Cullum recovers enough to start asking questions, Jason becomes the first person he needs to get his hands on. Because Cullum is not going to forget being shot. A man like that does not wake up from something like this and simply move on. No, it seems like Cullum would need a name. He would need someone to blame, and Jason, being Jason, might know the truth, or at least know enough of it to become dangerous. But Jason not talking, that is the part that feels painfully believable to me. Jason would rather suffer than expose someone. He has done it before in different ways. He has absorbed consequences that were not entirely his. He has taken punishment because in his mind, pain is manageable. Pain is clean. Pain is something he can understand. But betrayal, losing control over someone else's safety, that is where things get complicated. And maybe I am thinking too much about this, but the torture part is what changes everything. Not because Jason cannot endure it. He can. That almost makes it worse. Cullum could hurt him again and again, and Jason might still refuse to say the one thing Cullum wants to hear. But Cullum is not stupid. He would eventually understand that Jason's own life is not the pressure point. Jason does not value himself the way other people value him. He treats his own survival like it is optional sometimes. But Danny is different. Danny is where the whole thing starts to crack. I keep coming back to the thought that Danny is Jason's real vulnerability now, more than ever. Sam is gone. That absence still hangs over everything. Danny does not have his mother anymore. And whatever people want to say about Jason's distance or his choices or the danger around him, Jason is still the father Danny has left. That matters. It matters in a way Jason may not even be able to say out loud. So if Cullum brings up Danny, if he even hints at Danny's name, I think Jason's silence changes. Maybe not immediately. Maybe Jason still tries to hold the line because that is what he does. But inside, I think something would move. Something would panic. And that is where Danny's own choices become terrifying. Because Danny is grieving. He is angry. He is young enough to believe that action can fix pain and old enough to know where to aim that anger. There is a possibility that Danny could go after Sidwell or try to make some move against him. And that thought feels like watching a match fall toward gasoline. Danny might think he is doing something brave. He might think he is protecting his family or honoring his mother or proving he is not helpless. But Sidwell is not someone Danny should touch. That is what scares me about this whole theory. Sidwell feels like the kind of enemy who does not need to raise his voice to destroy someone. Even Sonny has to be careful with him. Even Sonny, who has survived wars and betrayals and men far worse than most people can imagine, seems like he knows that a direct confrontation with Sidwell could cost too much. So what happens if Danny steps into that world without understanding the depth of it? I can see Cullum using that. I can see him telling Jason that if Jason does not return to town, Danny may not survive whatever he is about to do. And I can also see Cullum twisting the knife further, making it clear that even if Sidwell does not act, Cullum himself cannot promise what he might do to Danny. That is such a cruel kind of leverage because it does not require proof. It only requires possibility. And Jason lives in a world where possibility is enough. He knows threats become real fast. He knows people get hurt in the space between hesitation and action. So then Jason has to choose. And I hate that choice for him because it is not really a choice at all. If he keeps refusing to reveal who shot Cullum, Danny could become collateral damage. But if Jason confesses or gives Cullum the truth, he may be handing someone else over to a monster. That is the Jason Morgan trap, always. One person's safety on one side, another person's life on the other, and Jason standing in the middle like he can somehow bleed enough to balance the scale. I could be wrong, but I think Jason would try to negotiate, not beg. Jason does not beg, but he would make terms. He might tell Cullum the truth, or enough of the truth, only if Cullum agrees not to retaliate against the person who shot him. And honestly, that condition feels very Jason to me. He would give up his own freedom before he would give up someone else's life. But Cullum would not just accept that for nothing. That is where this whole thing gets darker. There is a possibility that Cullum agrees, but only because he sees a better use for Jason. Not as a prisoner, not as a corpse, but as a weapon, a secret weapon. Someone who can move through Port Charles with history, connections, trust, and fear all wrapped around him. Someone people will still associate with Sonny, even if he is quietly taking orders from Cullum. That would be the real nightmare. Jason returns to town. Danny sees his father again. Maybe for one brief second it feels like a miracle. Maybe Danny believes he has not lost everyone. Maybe people around Jason want to believe he survived and found his way back the same man he was before. But he would not be free. And I think that is the part that would haunt me most. Jason walking through Port Charles, standing near the people who love him, maybe even looking Sonny in the eye, while knowing he belongs to Cullum in some hidden way. Not emotionally, not willingly, but through threat, through obligation, through fear for Danny. Jason, as Cullum's secret enforcer, does not mean Jason suddenly becomes loyal to Cullum. That would be too simple, and the truth could be more complicated than it looks. It might mean Jason is trapped in a role he despises, forced to carry out orders he cannot refuse, because every refusal could bring danger back to Danny. And what would that do to Sonny? Because Sonny and Jason's bond has always survived things it probably should not have survived. But this, Jason keeping a secret alliance with Cullum, even under coercion, could look like betrayal from the outside. Sonny might sense something is off. Carly might sense it too. People who know Jason know his silence, but they also know the difference between silence and concealment. There is a tension there that I think could slowly build. Maybe Jason starts pulling away. Maybe he avoids direct answers. Maybe he protects Cullum's interests without anyone realizing that is what he is doing. And every time he does it, he tells himself it is for Danny. He tells himself it is temporary. He tells himself he can find a way out. But can he? That is the question I cannot get past. Because Cullum would not choose Jason unless he believed he could control him. And the only way to control Jason is to threaten someone Jason loves. Danny is not just leverage. Danny is the lock on the cage. And maybe Danny's own reckless move towards Sidwell is the thing that makes the cage close. Maybe Cullum does not even have to invent a threat. Maybe he only has to point at what is already happening and make Jason understand that his son is standing too close to a fire he cannot survive. I do not want Jason to agree to become Cullum's man, but I can understand why he might. That is what makes it painful. This would not be Jason choosing darkness because he wants power. It would be Jason choosing captivity because the alternative is losing his son. And for a man who has already lost so much, for a father who may feel like he has failed Danny by being absent, by being dangerous, by being Jason Morgan, I think that guilt could make him do almost anything. So when he comes back, if he comes back different, I do not think we should only ask what changed Jason. We should ask who owns the secret he is carrying. Because Maybe Jason returns to Port Charles alive, but not untouched. Maybe Danny gets his father back, but not completely. Maybe Sonny gets his best friend back, but with a shadow standing between them. And maybe Cullum's recovery is not the end of the danger at all. Maybe it is the beginning of Jason's worst kind of prison. The kind where the door is open, the streets are familiar, the people he loves are close enough to touch, but every move he makes still belongs to someone else. I may be wrong about all of this. These could be only pieces that never connect the way I think they will. But I cannot shake the feeling that Jason's return will not be simple, and it will not be clean. So the real question is not just whether Jason will agree to become Cullum's secret pawn. It is whether once he does it for Danny, he will ever be able to stop.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.